back of us is Route 93, which has been actually a big part of Salem. It really brought in a lot of traffic and tourists and stuff like that. But what do we have here in back? What did you want us to talk about here?
Well, this plays a big significant time not only in the community's history but the Salem Fire Department's history. Back in the early 70s, Route 93 was actually expanded from Massachusetts all the way up to Concord. And basically when this came here, it gave the people from Massachusetts ability now to be mobile. And they would actually be able to live in a nice bedroom farm type community, which this was pretty much before that event, and now be able to travel into Boston and do everything else and become very mobile. Well, that happened in the 70s. It also created a housing boom for the town of Salem. Yep. It went from having small houses now into some of the areas we know in town that has the community part of the housing where you have a lot of families in the same area. And that happened in the 70s from 93 expansion. When 93 came in the 70s, Salem Fire Department went from being a typical volunteer, some paid on-call people, to a full-time, around-the-clock fire department. Because when this came through, and it also increased our call volume, we went from having anywhere from 500 to 600 to 900 calls a year, up now to 1,500 to 2,000 calls a year, and now also demand for services, ambulance services and those type of things. Also in the 70s, we also had, actually in 1969, the Board of Fire Underwriters that we talked about in 1905. Right. The insurance underwriters also played a very valuable role, around the same time that 93 came through here. They've published another report saying that the Salem Fire Department needs to, one, have a fire alarm, municipal fire alarm system around. And that's what we have today, an area where you go pull an alarm, it rings on a ticker tape, comes over a telephone cable and rings at our fire station. The future of that now is that we're going to radio boxes. You go and pull the fire alarm, and the fire alarm activates. It goes by radio waves right to our station. And the good thing about that new technology from that area is that we actually know what zone, what part of the building's going off when we leave the station, where that comes in by radio. It also tells us digital readout, where in the old time we had to get to the station, go up front of the building, look at the box, the enunciate panel, and find out what station. So again, it allows us to deliver services quickly and efficiently to our customers. The second thing happened in 1970, other than 93, was that the town needed to buy its first ladder truck.
Talking about history, especially Salem history, this is the place to be, RockinghamPark.
Absolutely. Salem's been a vital part of our community right back from when it was first born back in the 1800s. It went through from being having horse racing here to back in World War I. A lot of the troops would come here and they were actually dispersed from here overseas to actually first air mill happening here. To actually they had actually a wooden track and they had car racing like NASCAR today here. The significant part of the place for the Salem Fire Department, though, is in 1980, 6:45 on a bright, sunny day, this beautiful grandstand burned. And the unique thing that happened for the Salem Fire Department is by the time the first company showed on the scene, that the building was fully involved. So the building at that time burned and not only had an economic impact with jobs and finances for the community, but also at the time and up until recently was the largest loss of fire and the largest financial building loss of fire in the state of New Hampshire's history. There was over 100 firefighters here. There was 5 ladder trucks. There was numerous fire engines and personnel here. We had mutual aid. They were saying that they could see smoke and fire coming up from 93, coming up from Boston. It was a major event that affected this community. And it also affected the Salem Fire Department. From this event here, we now took a more proactive approach into our fire suppression systems with sprinkler systems and those type of things to limit another major loss of fire like this from happening again. And I think we've accomplished that over the years, that we haven't seen a fire like this magnitude, thank God, since 1980.
And it also showed teamwork again in that everybody got together to keep this together and rebuild it.
Yes, this could really turn bad because on the positive side, this fire, the firefighters that were here and the ladder companies and the mutual aid companies that we had from Methuen's and Lawrence and out to Lowell and past that, those areas, actually did a great job keeping it to this building. Unfortunately, the grandstand, which is the big part of the area, was actually lost, but they actually kept it from spreading into the barn area, to the jockey clubs, and it could have had a real huge conflagration. And these type of fires are unique to fight because when they get that big and going in a building this size, they actually become what they call as a firestorm, and they actually generate their own heat, their own high temperatures and wind currents, and they actually have their own wind, like today it's kind of windy out, but actually has its own wind generated from the heat from the fire. So they can turn into a major conflagration, and luckily the fire departments, again, with their efforts and their manpower and their ability. And again, when the fire started, the building, when they first pulled on the scene, the building was fully involved, which means they were already behind the 8-ball. We were able to limit it to this one building and be able to now save the barn area and the other areas that are around here. And again, it was a very great effort by our firefighters.